Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan, my last Attack on Titan video basically. Because this one is for Attack on Titan, the final season, the final chapter special 2, the actual finale of Attack on Titan. So in a way, it's finally over because the season 4 stuff has just gone on and on and on. So it's nice to kind of be at the end, to actually have it after all of this waiting. And in that sense, just the idea, Attack on Titan, this amazing show, is now finally come to an end. But how did it do the ending? The kind of the ending that what I know about the manga as like an anime only viewer of Attack on Titan is just that I had heard the ending was controversial. Liked by some, heavily disliked by others. Didn't know any of the details about it, just that this really strong manga anime had a ending that was regarded as it's mixed. And my own thoughts are basically that I didn't think it was an amazing ending. I didn't think that it was an awful ending. So I just come out somewhere in the middle. Probably more kind of like than like it was okay. So kind of average, leaning more towards the negative, I would probably say, than positive. And that is just, I think part of it is the quality I expect from this series. This didn't match up in my mind with what I expected based on like a lot of the other material. I think endings are always tricky, and in many ways I think I was aware that it was never going to be the ending that would completely satisfy me. And I think I've been there since relatively early into season 4. Just the direction with everything that they're going, the focus very heavily on the idea of just this kind of built-in discrimination against Eldians, and that being so much of a key, this like cycle of hatred basically. And it's like the series is not giving me anything to suggest that there is a solution to this. And because of the characterization of Eren, they don't seem to be suggesting there's any surprise plan in place here. So when we were setting up like the crazy plan that Eren actually has, rumbling to pretty much wipe out everyone else, it's like, oh, I guess they're doing this. Like, this is the only kind of solution that they feel that they actually have. And obviously, I think there's criticism to be had there about the idea of, okay, that's certainly Attack on Titan being Attack on Titan, deciding to take this kind of gritty, very realistically, perhaps for fiction, maybe overly realistic approach to this, and not attempt to add like any sort of like fantasy, like idealism, optimism into the ending, and just really keep it grounded in this way where it's kind of like, no, if there's a time to be a little bit more optimistic, I think it is in your ending here, especially if you're doing this kind of thing where characters are being heroic, sacrifices are being made, like truths are being revealed. Like I think you can justify tonally being a little bit different and not just like, we're Attack on Titan, we have to be this way the whole time through. It's one of those ones where I think the arc for like certain characters was actually pretty good, but for other characters it's just like, I kind of feel like the series lost its way a little bit with characters like I think Eren is definitely the main topic here of like, I don't think I can fully get behind the approach that they had with Eren. And I want to make it clear, this is not this situation of like, oh, I really liked, season 4 cool guy Eren, and I just wanted him to be that way, like, going forward. No, like there was always going to be some reveal about, like, that was an act, because you know, there is a reason we weren't focusing much on the main character up to now. I was always aware we were going to build to some sort of a post-defeat. Eren finally reveals what this was all about. But it's about sort of the core trajectory of the character, and in a way, the way the situation was written for why this had to be the only solution to it. And this is where I think the magic system of Attack on Titan, the whole paths, Titan power stuff, it felt like this is where the fact that hadn't been addressed or covered, I think, as much in a lot of detail, really kind of came to hurt the show in the end, where like Eren has to basically explain that, oh, the reason that effectively a 80% genocide of the world, the reason that was the only solution to this was because when you're connected to the past as like the founder, you experience like the past, present, and future at the same time. Therefore, you are effectively locked onto a kind of predestined path, and there's nothing that you can do to change that. It seems like, based on what he said, they roughly alluded to the idea of like he tried different options, but then it's very clear about like, whoa, what does that mean? There's different timelines here. How does that work? The whole idea that he decided that this was the best solution, but then it's really unclear, like, when did these other cycles of this happen, and how does that even work? Because it's a weird thing of like, it's time travel related stuff, but like it's not full time travel, so it's really confusing about how like this was the best we could get, basically. And because that hinges upon, well, you wrote the power to be that way when I don't think you really had to. I get the whole plot point that they're trying to get across, which is that the second he basically kissed Historia's hand, he saw this whole thing. He saw that he was not free anymore because he was effectively locked into this path. And so the whole line that comes up later on, he was a slave to freedom, this kind of contradiction within itself, the idea of like slave, not free, but to freedom. So he continuously goes along this path wanting freedom, knowing the whole time that he's fundamentally not free. And I can see how to some people that might be a very like appealing ending to the character, but for me it's just like, not really, because it hinges completely upon a thing that didn't really need to be in place. And I don't think the paths needed to work in that way, especially when Eren literally just tells us this. Like, we are not really shown these other scenarios where potentially things work out worse than they actually did here. And I think this is where the fundamental error Attack on Titan made from season 4 onwards is that not having the ability to focus on Eren because you're holding back everything for this big like 10+ minute explanation that Eren is going to give to Armin at the end, that didn't work out. Like, you relied way too much on the telling aspect of that all at the end, that it's just like, well, I need an explanation, that's fine, but could I not have seen Eren go through this? Because I'm a little bit like, why is this character like changed in a way so much? And then the reveal is kind of like that, but no, this is the way the character was the whole time. Because of the whole path thing, everything that happened to him was orchestrated by himself. And I struggle with that so much because of the way they showcased it. Because they didn't actually, in a way, make it like a full-on time travel show where you would really show the effects of the whole cycle aspect and, you know, him realizing there is no other path. And so settling on what is the best of these terrible outcomes. Because we never saw that. I think it just makes it really unsatisfying when Eren eventually reveals that that's what this was all about. And I think for Attack on Titan, which has otherwise been very good about doing like reveals to kind of secrets and mysteries, I think this is the core of my my issue with this is that this is the definition of like writing yourself into this corner of like certain plot elements required the paths to work sort of like this, but I don't think you needed to do it in this exact and precise way. And I think you could have done a more hopeful, optimistic ending with some sort of an idea of linking stuff together more and allowing kind of Eren to maybe actually have a kind of true moment of freedom where he kind of defeats that kind of predestined situation. Instead, what you end up actually doing is more the idea that, like, as we see here, it was as is expected. Eren is becoming the villain to allow his friends to become the heroes, to create at least some sort of a situation where they can hopefully live long lives in the aftermath of everything that's happened. The explanation that is given is that with 80% of the population outside the walls gone, civilization will drop back down. So the extra technology that they now have has been pushed way back. Now Paradis and the much smaller population of the rest of the world is more level. Now at least it's even. Both sides won't be able to defeat each other as we kind of get into a kind of restabilization kind of situation. And then because of where Eren's friends are left in the aftermath of this as like Eldians who stopped a plot that would fundamentally benefit Eldians and actually saved Marleyans. There's a confliction there of like, you can't deny this because some of your high-ups saw them be heroic in the final kind of actions, and like that's the positivity of the ending, is just giving them that kind of path. It's going to be tough because there is still conflict. The conflict is not resolved by the end of this. They're the kind of ambassadors trying to sort of help things, even though it doesn't actually fix things, because as we see, even though they reveal that because of what happened, they don't have the Titan powers anymore, the question comes up of like, prove it to us. Prove you don't have the Titan powers. And they won't fully believe it. Armin kind of steps in and stops it from being a like execute on sight thing immediately. But there is the suspicions kind of fundamentally, is that like you could only prove it in a way when they were Titans, but now that they're not, it's kind of like you can't really prove the negative necessarily. So that's that. And then getting into the whole idea of like, how did this actually resolve itself? What were the kind of technicalities of how they actually like stopped the rumbling, ended Eren and stuff like that? So the rumbling, of course, gets stopped by the defeat of Zeke, because the whole situation, because of I forget the exact terminology for it, is like the vow of non-aggression or whatever it was. The whole idea of like the reason that you can't necessarily act against this was because of the king's kind of like vow in the past. But because it was Eren kind of connecting with Zeke, it worked because he had the royal blood, but then he had the freedom to make the opposite choice. So with Zeke dead, fully removed from this, the royal aspect is gone, and so it kind of, I guess, reverted itself, and so that stops the rumbling, so that this is what fundamentally saves the 20% of people left. But then it still leaves the situation where they still have to actually take out Eren, like the founding Titan, and there's a huge battle, of course, and we get the whole thing of the sort of resurrected past holders of the past versions of the different 9 Titan powers, which was a kind of cool sequence because they're going up against people that they know, but of course it's like construct kind of versions of them. But then we obviously set up the idea in the paths that like Armin talks to Zeke, and they end up kind of encountering a lot of the other characters, like Ymir is there and everyone else. And so we get the sort of characters that we know turning against the sort of like, I suppose, ancient holders of these powers. And that's kind of what kind of clears the way a little bit. And we eventually get to a situation where it's, there's multiple kind of stages where like they the whole initial sequence is to eventually get to a situation where we need to get Armin back because he gets taken out of the fight quickly. Because, of course, the bomb aspect of the Colossal Titan is a huge factor here. Armin eventually makes the explosion go off, and this takes out the giant kind of walking form of the Founding Titan. But we get the kind of reveal that, oh, here's the thing again. What's it called? The source of all living matter, or whatever it is. The kind of worm thing that is the underlying power of all of the Titans, that tries to reconnect to Eren, but it doesn't happen because everyone steps in to stop it from happening. So you do get the situation where you have the two different kind of like entities. You have sort of like Founding Titan Eren kind of disconnected from the kind of source of all living matter, and then you have the thing on its own, acting as kind of separate entities. And this was at the point where I'm like, here we go. If they're doing a little bit more of an optimistic ending, this is the point at which, what if Eren fights against the source of all living matter? Because if he helps to defeat the thing now separated from him, and they kill that destroys what it is. Like, Titan stuff is just gone forever. It's not just removed from specific people, but that actually destroys the core underlying like power, full stop. That would be the solution to this overall. But instead, they go down the path of, like, this brings in the kind of Mikasa plot that we've been setting up for at least a little bit, which is that as an Ackerman, she's kind of connected to Eren because he saved her. And the idea is that her powers kind of relate to that, and she can't really act against Eren. So she's not free to kill him, even if she kind of feels that she has to. And so this is this plot point here. Will Mikasa actually do this? In the end, she does. She clears the path, she goes in, and she actually cuts Eren's head off, which is actually Eren's head, like, within the body, within the mouth of the Founding Titan thing. And so she actually manages to do this. But then they have Ymir watching on at this moment, and this is where I feel like this could have been explained or developed like a lot more than it actually was. Like, again, this is another one of these things where, like, it requires Eren to explain to us why this did anything, because I was confused for quite a while about, like, wait, why does just killing Eren result in all the Eldians losing the Titan powers? The thing that is the source of all powers is still out there, because there's a clear point at which the giant worm thing is out there, and then they just cut away from it. They defeat Eren, and it's like, it's over. They cut, and it's like, wait. Isn't the giant worm thing still over there, like, doing stuff? Because it put out the gas that turned all the Eldians into Titans. And then, like, Reiner and everyone and Annie were fighting it as the final blow was delivered against Eren. And it's just like, wait, what happened to it? Like, we didn't actually cover the details of, did that just disappear in the moment Eren was killed? Because they never really established what was going on there, because it's like, it can exist separate from Eren, but if Eren's killed, it goes away. What? So that was a big confusion for me, that they just left that kind of mostly unresolved. I'll get into my thoughts on, I think, what I think they're doing with it. But what they end up revealing is that the reason Ymir watched Mikasa kill Eren is that they reveal that the reason all of this is happening, the reason Ymir, now free to act, has not made a decision to do something different than she has been for the last 2,000 years. The reason she's just going ahead with things is because out of nowhere, no logic would suggest this is the case, but she actually loved the king. The person who, like, abused her and did all those kind of horrible things. Like, this should not be how she feels about this. But that was her thoughts on the situation. That's why she was doing this the whole time, and in a way why Titans hadn't kind of maybe faded away before. She, as the founder, has some sort of control over all of this. And Eren kind of points out that, in a way, the fundamental thing that this was all building up to, the reason that this is kind of the best solution is that, okay, there's the whole population, how this affects human groups, but that the only way to kind of resolve things with kind of Ymir and the Titan aspect of everything was for Ymir to see Mikasa go against, like, fate, go against her feelings and make this kind of free decision to actually kill Eren. And so this, her seeing this happen, her breaking it away from those kind of Ackerman things where she's locked into, she can't ever defeat Eren, that proves to Ymir that she was wrong to kind of persist with this entire time. And so she, at that point, gives up and kind of moves on effectively. And this is why the defeat of Eren in those specific circumstances leads to people not having Titan powers anymore. Again, because I feel the neater solution to that is to just kill the worm thing, because that makes sense. The source of the power is that thing. Kill that, the powers go away. I'm still a little bit like, how is this all, like, inherently linked? Like, I guess the idea is that the worm thing has a certain amount of powers itself by just the nature of what it is, but it needs a host. And Ymir has been part of the whole path thing for a while, and so she still has control over that. I guess that's how it works. And I think there are elements of that work, but I think it's such an extreme thing to suddenly drop that on you, that, like, oh wait, she actually did love him. I'm like, wait, what? And I needed more on that. Like, I felt like I needed more backstory with Ymir to kind of get behind that as the arc. I felt like I needed her as a character to actually talk about her own feelings on that, and not just Eren again telling us what happened. And again, that's fundamental kind of storytelling stuff of, like, I accept a certain amount, and I like a certain amount of stuff to just be flat out explained in text, even if it's not shown. But I think it was done way too much in the kind of Armin Eren scene here. And the fact that this has to be explained to the audience and Armin that, oh yeah, this is why it all happened. She needed to see Mikasa do this. But even Eren is like, I don't really know why it happened. Like, most of my core end of that explanation is just my interpretation of that, is that she saw Mikasa be free and, in a way, make the kind of choice that she never made herself to fully separate herself from the king. And now that frees her up. There was a line about, like, oh, so you're always the one in my head. And it's like, wait, how does that work? I thought Ackermans were separate than the Eldians, which is what the paths are connected to. Like, what? So there's some weirdness there. Maybe I'm just misremembering some plot point here on that. But anyway, so there's that. So that's most of the kind of action stuff. And again, like, a lot of the characters get their kind of big moments. Like, as ever, Reiner keeps getting beaten up, but keeps going again. They do roughly the same thing with Pieck, who shows, like, her skill of being able to rapidly form a new Titan, get ripped out of one, form another new Titan just rapidly because she's got so much endurance. That was pretty cool. We do get the Falco reveal of, like, yes, he is he's the Jaw Titan, but with edits because of the Beast Titan. And then because they did the whole reveal that, like, previous Beast Titans were actually different animals, this allowed for him to actually be a flying animal. And so this is where they do arrive in to save the day. Annie's involved in the action a little bit as well. So that kind of action side of things was pretty interesting. There were some intercut moments there as well, where, like, they highlighted what was it? It was like Annie's father, I think, getting a lot of the Eldians kind of to get involved in things, and they want to get medical support for their people, but Marleyan soldiers are still like, "What are you doing?" Even though like the rumbling was kind of like ongoing at that moment. So that was a bit of a kind of interesting situation. There was a kind of very kind of emotionally well done moment when the rumbling was still happening and the people were running away towards the edge of a cliff, and the pileup was happening. A mother holding a child ends up falling off the cliff, and the people slowly realized that, like, what are we doing, like, in a mob kind of like pushing a child off the cliff, and like they save the child and kind of push it back, and it seems like that child actually survives because the rumbling does end right before the kind of end of kind of all of this. So that's that. There was a brief intercut moment where they did show Historia like giving birth, and just the reveal that, like, oh yeah, the father is just some random person. Okay. So that's that. So I would definitely say Historia's arc felt like it just got sidelined in a way when it came to that. Like, she was so important for a certain section of the story and then gone. So that's a little bit disappointing. John, Connie get kind of moments where like they're involved. They're kind of doing stuff like John gets to kind of set off the explosives. Connie gets a moment where like he has to save and then kind of saves Levi. Levi does get his moment where he defeats Zeke, which kind of stops the rumbling. And that is Zeke kind of just popping out once he kind of regains his kind of sense of self, and he just allows himself to be killed. He sort of like taunts, like in a funny kind of way, Levi again, and Levi just kills him by cutting his head off. So that was satisfying. Levi survives, which I was a little bit surprised at. I think the fact that he was going in injured and then he got further injured, I was like convinced like something is happening. But because he never actually had to, I suppose, face the full-on Beast Titan, I get kind of what they were doing, that like he actually manages to survive, that like they don't in a way do the obvious thing with him where like, oh, he's a scout member, he's gonna get killed so he can join the others, but he actually kind of doesn't in the end. That was kind of interesting. With regard to, I suppose, like let's talk about the romances. So Annie and Armin, they had subtle moments, basically. Like, again, Annie and her actions kind of being informed, especially now, by kind of care for Armin was kind of interesting, but I don't think there was any particular point where they necessarily confirmed they were a couple. Like, in the end moment where they're all ambassadors, like, the fact that like he's sitting down and she comes in and sort of like stands by his shoulder was kind of like, is that what we're meant to like assume here? I guess. Otherwise, like the only other relationship is like that they were in any way were tackling was Mikasa and Eren, and this is an interesting one where it ends up being important, of course, for like Mikasa's arc, because it ends up being like the only real aspect of her arc that was kind of present within the show overall. And it's a fine ending point, but like I wish more was done with it. And again, Mikasa, this is where Mikasa suffers a little bit from Eren not being used to like as much as he probably should have been in the entire like season 4 and all the specials. She suffers from that as well if this was meant to be this massive moment, because it gets very confusing where it's like, I get it, kind of Armin has to kind of punch him to be like, just be honest about like your feelings, but and I suppose the idea is that Eren in this iteration of it specifically chose to separate himself from his friends, and especially anything romantically with Mikasa, to make it easier for her to make the choice in the end that was important to actually ending things. But it's complicated so much by the fact that in a way, so many decisions at the same time mean more, but also mean less because of the whole path thing, and everything was like predetermined. It like including like reveals, like, you know, they basically say like, oh, I had to direct the Titan towards my mother to kind of create my own kind of backstory, so I would actually go on this path. And it's like, what? So I still maintain I'm not a huge fan of the way they did that, and the fact that they kind of went for the whole, if you see the future, that is locked in. Nothing you can ever do will change that. I don't think they ever address that enough. Because obviously the implication here is that like the two of them did actually care for each other. Like this would have been an ideal match in so many ways. It was just, it never really worked out. And because they never really focused on it, like I never particularly focused on it that much. Like that's just me with like Attack on Titan and kind of like shipping. I'm not much of a shipper in the first place unless the show is very clearly doing a relationship. I'm not really super into shipping, which is why I actually for a moment was kind of like, oh, Eren Historia, maybe they seem to be kind of setting up some stuff there. There actually is more kind of, it feels like there's more there than there is with Mikasa. Retroactively, it seems like, yeah, why didn't they kind of maybe do something here? But otherwise, like Armin kind of suggested the idea of like, oh, she's going to settle down with someone else, but they don't obviously suggest anything at the end, because they still highlight the whole like Mikasa's on her own at the end, and she never forgot about Eren type stuff. And then it gets into maybe some of the weirder moments, like a lot of the moments with like Mikasa like kissing Eren's like dead head and then carrying it around and then burying it, and that little weird in that like the emotion you're going for there compared to the visual of the scene is just like night and day. It's so hard to almost take it like seriously, that like it's like, whoa. The moment where she's sitting at the tree and the bird puts the scarf over her shoulder, and I'm guessing it's meant to be mostly symbolic, but they basically all but tell you that like the bird is like the reincarnation of Eren to a certain extent, and it's like, what? Okay, I guess. Just kind of like, well, where did that come from? Then there was stuff in the credits, and this was what was, I think, quite interesting to me, is that you look at the credits and they basically show Mikasa buries Eren's head at the kind of foot of this tree that he would always nap at, and we saw that in a bunch of little backstory moments, and I think that's like is that where he wakes up in the first episode? I think it might be. I think they're going for that sort of symbolism. So that tree, and we covered that over a variety of time. I think they show like Mikasa coming back to it as she kind of like ages and stuff like that. And then they start to really accelerate through the time. The idea of like the city in the background actually builds up into something much more modern, technological. And then they seem to go into more kind of almost like future kind of tech. And you can see like there's helicopters and stuff like that. Bombings are happening. And the idea obviously being that, oh, over time, you know, there's kind of peace for a certain amount of time, because they basically told us that with technology low and with everyone kind of like building up, it will be a certain amount of time before anything happens, but that the ending was very much like, but there will still be conflict. There will always in a way be conflict, because we don't forget about kind of history, basically. So it seems like it picks up again just in a new technological era. Then we kind of cut to the city being like ruined in the background, and then the final sequence is we zoom in on the tree, which is now huge, and then a new character, and it's very kind of dystopian kind of future, you know, like we're surviving in the wilderness in the aftermath of a war type thing. This kid walks up to the tree, and it's revealed that the tree, previously just like a kind of standard tree, now has that kind of dual kind of root kind of and an opening inside it. which is obviously basically identical to what Ymir walked into, where she found the Titan power, the kind of source of all living matter for the first time, like how that all happened. And so the implication here, and I think along with the idea of like they never addressed where the worm thing went, and it seems to be a significant plot point that she specifically chose to bury Aaron's head under there, that I'm guessing in the moment Aaron died and this all happened, I'm guessing the implication is that people saw the worm like disappear, but it probably somehow like instantaneously retreated into his head and just remained there until there would be a situation where someone could come into contact with it later on. And it seems to be the sort of idea that this is the cycle happening again, because the character, even though they don't really show you the face, I think was meant to be an Eren type character of the future. And that this is just going to happen again, but this time this character will, I guess, get the Titan powers and it'll just kind of come back. And I'm almost like, okay, I get it, leaving it on that moment to be like, ooh, and it happens again, and cyclical stuff like that. But I'm also like, I kind of feel that ruins a little bit of what we were going for here, that like we at least achieved something in what we did here, but now the idea is like, oh yeah, it's just back. The plan that we came up for just didn't address the core power of the Titans still like existing into the future. But again, it doesn't directly confirm that, but it feels like, what is the significance of that final scene and the visuals being so similar in that location, if not to suggest that? I don't really get it. In that, like, is there going to be a sequel series? Like, I forget how long it's been since the manga came to an end. I don't even remember what because I don't read the manga. But I guess it's been like, what, 2 years? Is it 3 years or something like that? I'm not really sure. Is there a sequel stuff planned? I don't know. Like, now would be a decent time if he has anything planned to like announce something, but I'm not really sure what the kind of plan here is, because if it's still alive, the source of all living matter, I feel there probably should be a story to end the cycle for good. And I think like it would be interesting to see like Titans in a highly technologically advanced kind of scenario where they are powerful in some ways, but like modern kind of weaponry and technology means that like they aren't at the level that they once were. Like that is an interesting concept, I think, overall. But there's that, and then what else do I want to talk about? Again, I suppose more on the Eren Armin conversation was kind of interesting, where you have the moment where I suppose Armin, finally realizes kind of what Eren did, and kind of like basically sort of like thanks him for doing this, and then also kind of takes some of the responsibility on himself, kind of realizing that like, because Eren is very negative on himself and is just like, I was not able to do anything. Maybe it's because I was just like an idiot granted like this kind of crazy power, and because I was kind of in a way not intelligent enough to come up with like a clever solution, that I resigned the world to, you know, near full kind of like all humanity being wiped out basically. But Armin kind of steps up and is just like in a way like, I have to take responsibility too, because I was the one who in a way planted that kind of seed in your head that the outside world is this place that is like like it's just the wonders of the outside world, but I never gave you anything to work with to maybe suggest that it wasn't perfect and representing your kind of ideal freedom. And then, you know, obviously he's kind of acknowledging his own role in kind of everything that happened, that I'll go down as like the hero who saved 20% of humanity, but like I had a role in the 80% that died, and like we'll try to do better in the future. And like, you know, this idea of like we'll see each other again in hell, basically. And it's like, oh, okay, I sort of get what we're going for here, but like I'm not sure how strongly I feel about the some of the wording in some of this. Maybe doesn't feel the greatest to me. And I think that what I just said there, like that's kind of a lot of my thoughts on this. It's just like, it's okay, but I have some big issues, but it's not awful, so it's kind of okay, but and it's just like, and again it comes into the idea of like, you know, this show's really good, so I had somewhat high expectations for a good ending, and it's not really the really really strong ending. Aspects of it are, I think, quite interesting and well done. Like I do think like a lot of the action is kind of like, this was action kind of like befitting the finale of Attack on Titan, like amazing ODM kind of gear sequences, pretty much all the different Titan powers getting their chance to kind of do a little bit of everything. Most of the cast that are involved here getting their chance to kind of do something or other within the story. It's just more of the, as we come to an end, the kind of, it is this very like, it's not like a happy ending really. That it's sort of the happy ending in the sense that the main cast, like I suppose Eren aside, get the chance to kind of live their lives, and that like obviously with the Titan stuff gone, the characters who were Titan shifters don't die in just a couple of years. They get a chance to kind of live kind of full lives, and I suppose that by itself is maybe a bit of a kind of proof type thing that they can do that, of like, well, Marleyans, like you should know because you basically constructed a system around like controlling the Titan powers. You know that this is a hard set rule that if you have a Titan power, you die after so many years. Reiner here is still alive, so all you have to do, and you know you made him into a Titan, all you have to do is monitor Reiner, and he's only got like a little bit of time left. So if he survives past that time, then you know all the Titan stuff is gone, because he was the current holder of the Armored Titan, and he didn't give it wasn't given to anyone. So there's a bit of proof, you know. There were things that maybe like you wish they could have done, but it's just, yeah, just the idea of like the ending. And I think I said this in my review for the previous special a few days ago. It's just like, I think the legacy of this show will be fine so long as the ending is not awful. And I think in that sense, it's sort of like, okay, box checked. I don't think the ending is so awful that it makes the amazing kind of breath of fresh air like season 1 was when it came out, and how it sort of like changed people's perception in a way of anime to a certain degree. Some of the kind of political stuff that began to come into play in season 2, along with some of the major reveals when the Titan shifter stuff started to actually happen. Season 3, like probably one of the best examples of a long form reveal just absolutely working. Like what's in the basement and kind of the reveal of the outside world, like wonderful stuff in those seasons. It's just, I think the approach to doing sort of parody versus the rest of the world, Eldians versus the rest of the world, that kind of plot point, introducing properly the whole path system and what it does and doesn't do, the trajectory for Eren in the kind of final sequence, that's to me where the show went a little bit awry in a way that just wasn't ideal. Like, I don't like despise what they did here, but it's like, I think this could have been better done in a different way, but they committed to this from quite early, it felt like, in season 4, and even some of the earlier setup stuff of like what it was ultimately going to mean. It's just like, yeah, I just wish it was a bit stronger. So for me, like, it's one of those ones where like a middling ending doesn't like ruin the show, obviously, but it kind of probably like prevents it from maybe being a like default, you know, greatest of all time style anime. And not, people are obviously going to have different preferences and stuff like that. Attack on Titan isn't for everyone, so it's never going to be a universally agreed upon thing that Attack on Titan is the best anime of all time. And I think this ending kind of, I think, probably helps to like this anime is mortal. It made some mistakes towards the ending, and it keeps it in line with other high quality series that are out there. Like, I think that's just what it comes down to here. It's still super high quality, and some of those moments, season 1, 2, 3 especially, will always be great anime moments. It's just I especially because I tend to have an issue with the ending of quite a lot of anime manga. Like, I think it is a struggle to make this work a lot of the times. Typically just because of the way a lot of this stuff is organized, and they never really give the manga writers enough room and freedom to just have enough time at the end to execute the ending properly. It can be rare to just have a series that is strong in its beginning, middle, and end, and all the way in between. And you know, the show came about as close to being, you know, ideal as, you know, you could maybe possibly hope for, I guess. But it'll be interesting to see if they do anything more, like if that's just it for Attack on Titan, or if they'll latch on to that kind of ending sequence and do some sort of a thing in the future and try and do some sort of continuation. We'll see what happens. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there. So obviously, if you have any questions about, like, say, scenes that I forgot to mention here, because again, it was basically, what was it, 85-minute, I think, total special. A lot of content to get through here. It was effectively like, how many episodes in one was this? It was like effectively like 4 episodes. Effectively, it was. So a lot of content here. So if I missed out on anything, ask me below and I'll do my best to comment with my thoughts on it. But yeah, the ending of Attack on Titan. There it is. The content is up on my channel if you want to go back and watch my thoughts on some of the other stuff. But that's been the review. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.